Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling one of the most well-known stories from the Bible, the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah, this one is super interesting.
It really is. And, we're not just looking at the biblical account today.
Right.
We've got historical analysis too,
Uh-huh.
plus some thoughts from Christian writers down through the centuries.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to sort of see how people have viewed this story and how they've understood it.
Yeah, like a little time-traveling expedition to uncover the truth behind this legendary tower.
Exactly.
So, to set the stage,
Okay.
our sources describe the world just after the flood.
Right. A fresh start.
Right. Everyone speaks the same language, united by this shared history.
Yeah.
And they're looking to, make their mark on the world.
Of course. I mean, can you imagine what that would be like? Everyone speaking the same language?
And I know. It's kind of hard to wrap our minds around it.
It's almost like a sci-fi concept in some ways.
It is. But at the same time, you can see how that shared language could lead to this sense of we can do anything.
Oh, absolutely.
So they decide, let's build a tower that reaches the heavens.
Ambitious.
Right. Talk about aiming high. We'll be famous, powerful.
A legacy.
For generations to come.
Yeah.
But, as we know, things don't go according to plan.
Not quite, which is where the story gets really interesting.
Yeah. It's like this collision between human ambition and, well, God's plan.
Exactly. And that brings us to the mastermind behind this ambitious project, Nimrod.
Oh, yeah, Nimrod. Now, what's fascinating is that he was Noah's great-grandson.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
Okay, yeah.
The man leading this, monumental act of defiance against God.
Right.
Is descended from the one chosen to survive his judgment.
It's almost ironic, isn't it? Like, even after such a dramatic event, that desire to rebel against God still persists.
It really makes you think about the lingering effects of sin, how it can be passed down through generations.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder what Nimrod was really after. I mean, was it just about building a tall tower?
Well, if you look at how some sources describe Nimrod, they paint him as a pretty powerful, maybe even tyrannical figure.
Oh, interesting.
So this wasn't just some vanity project,
Okay, yeah.
This was about power. It was about making a name for themselves, establishing their own authority, and really, thumbing their noses at God.
So more about pride and rebellion than bricks and mortar.
Exactly. They wanted control. They opted for this, human-made kingdom.
Right.
Instead of embracing God's plan for them to spread out and fill the earth.
So let's talk about the tower itself.
Yeah.
Our sources mention a ziggurat structure.
Ah, yes. Ziggurats. Fascinating structures.
Right. Could you paint us a picture of what that might have looked like?
Imagine this. Massive platforms.
Okay.
Stacked one on top of the other, creating this kind of stepped pyramid that ascends towards the sky.
Wow.
And at the very top,
Yeah.
a temple, dedicated to their ambitions, and maybe even to false gods.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful image. And you mentioned false gods. That brings us to another layer of this story, the potential connection to idolatry. We know that ancient Mesopotamia was like this melting pot of pagan religions.
It was.
So could the Tower of Babel have been an attempt to merge human ambition with idolatrous practices?
Absolutely. Think about it. They chose a ziggurat.
Right.
A structure very closely associated with Mesopotamian paganism.
Yeah?
So it suggests this deliberate intertwining of their worldly ambitions with idolatry, a subtle but profound act of rebellion against God.
It's like they were saying, we can do this on our own. We don't need God.
Exactly. And if you look at the materials they used,
Oh, yeah. What about that?
they didn't use the natural stone that God had provided. They opted for man-made bricks and tar.
Oh, it's like a symbolic rejection.
It is a declaration of independence. They believed they could achieve greatness through their own ingenuity and effort.
Wow, so many layers of meaning packed into this one story.
Yeah.
So how does God respond to this audacious act of defiance?
Well, you might expect a fiery, destructive judgment.
Yeah, like the flood.
Exactly. But God's response here is different. He chooses to confuse their language,
Oh, right.
leading to misunderstanding, frustration, and ultimately the scattering of people across the earth.
It's like God is saying, you want to build your own kingdom? Fine, but you're going to experience the consequences of that choice.
Exactly. You won't be able to understand each other, work together, or achieve your ambitions apart from me.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, that God acknowledges their unified purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Genesis, it says that nothing they planned to do would be impossible for them.
Right.
It's a little chilling when you think about it. That human unity can be this powerful force.
It can.
But without God's guidance, it can lead to disastrous outcomes. I mean, almost foreshadowing what the unified church could do.
If it's aligned with God's will, absolutely.
Yeah. If they could achieve so much in their rebellion, just imagine what could happen when we, as Christians, unite in obedience and love, empowered by the Holy Spirit. But that brings up a question. How do we build towers today?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's not like we're stacking bricks to reach the heavens anymore.
Right.
So what are some modern-day examples of this same kind of pride and rebellion against God?
Well, that's a question each of us really needs to wrestle with. But one thing is clear.
Yeah.
The human heart hasn't changed all that much since the days of Babel. We still struggle with pride, self-sufficiency, and the desire to make a name for ourselves apart from God.
Oh, yeah. I think that's something we can all relate to on some level.
Absolutely.
That's like a constant temptation, isn't it?
It is. To think we can do it all on our own.
Right. Like we've got it all figured out.
Exactly.
So if you had to give some concrete examples of what these modern towers might look like.
Okay, let's see. Well, think about the relentless pursuit of worldly success and recognition.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
It is. It's like we're building this tower of career achievements, social status, material possessions, all without ever acknowledging God's role in our lives.
Or seeking his guidance for our path.
Exactly.
It's like we're trying to reach this certain level of success or fame,
Right.
thinking that's going to give us fulfillment.
Yeah.
But we're doing it on our own terms,
Exactly.
without seeking God's blessing or purpose.
We are. We're building our own little towers of self-reliance.
Just like the people of Babel. Okay, so if those towers represent our misplaced ambitions, what about the confusion of languages? That seems like a pretty significant consequence. How does that play out in our lives today?
Well, one source made a really interesting point about that.
Okay.
It said that while the diversity of languages, it can be a barrier, it also presents this really unique opportunity for us to live out the gospel. Think about it.
Okay.
To share the message of Jesus Christ with all nations, you have to bridge those linguistic and cultural divides.
You do. It's like God is using our differences to encourage us to rely on each other, to step out of our comfort zones and find creative ways to communicate his love in a way that resonates with people from all walks of life.
Exactly. And that ties back to this whole idea of unity within the church.
Oh, right.
Despite our differences in language, culture.
Even theological perspectives.
Yes. We're united by our shared faith in Jesus Christ.
And our desire to see his kingdom come.
Absolutely.
So instead of allowing those differences to divide us.
Like at Babel.
Right. We can choose to see them as strengths, as opportunities to learn from each other, grow in our understanding of God, and work together to fulfill his great commission.
I love that. Such a positive way to look at it.
It is. And it reminds us that the scattering of people at Babel, that wasn't just a punishment.
Right.
It was part of God's plan to spread his glory throughout the earth.
It was.
Okay, so that makes sense. But here's a question I've been pondering. If God ultimately wanted humanity to spread out and fill the earth, why not just create different languages from the start?
That is a great question.
Why allow them to build the tower and then intervene?
It really gets to the heart of God's character.
Okay.
And his relationship with humanity. He gives us free will.
Right.
That ability to choose our own path, even if it leads us astray.
So by allowing them to build the tower, he was giving them the opportunity to experience the consequences of their choices, to see where their pride and self-reliance would lead.
Exactly. It's a lesson that's still relevant for us today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we often think we can do things better on our own, without God's guidance.
Right.
But the Tower of Babel, it serves as this stark reminder. Our best laid plans, no matter how impressive they seem, they will eventually crumble without a firm foundation in God's will.
They do. It's like that old saying, pride comes before the fall.
It is. But the beauty of God's grace is that even when we fall, even when we mess up, he's always there to pick us up and redirect our steps.
Oh, that's so true. And you know what? He can even use our mistakes.
Our moments of rebellion.
Exactly. To ultimately fulfill his purposes.
That brings us to another thought-provoking point that our sources raised, the idea that the scattering of people at Babel led to the formation of different nations and cultures.
That's right.
It's like God used this act of human defiance to seed the world with diversity and creativity.
It's amazing, isn't it? We often think of diversity as this modern concept.
We do.
But it's been woven into the fabric of human history since the very beginning.
Right from the start.
Yeah.
And that diversity, while it sometimes leads to conflict and misunderstanding,
Yeah.
it also has this incredible potential to enrich our lives and expand our understanding of God.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
When we engage with different cultures, we encounter different perspectives, different ways of expressing faith.
Different ways of experiencing God's love.
Yes.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions, it broadens our horizons, and it reminds us of the vastness and creativity of our Creator.
It's like we're seeing the world through a kaleidoscope, with each facet reflecting a different aspect of God's beauty and glory.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings us back to that question we posed earlier.
About?
How do we build towers today?
Right. But now we're not just talking about literal towers.
No.
But also about the ways we try to elevate ourselves, make a name for ourselves, and achieve success and fulfillment apart from God.
Right.
And it sounds like these modern towers can take many different forms.
They really can. And they're not always easy to spot.
Oh, no.
Sometimes these towers are subtle, disguised as good intentions or noble pursuits.
Oh, that's tricky.
It is. But if we're not careful, we can find ourselves building on a foundation of pride, self-sufficiency, and worldly ambition
Instead of
on the solid rock of Christ.
Okay, so how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we make sure we're building our lives on a foundation that honors God and aligns with His will?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. It feels like a big one.
It is a big one. And you know what? It's one that requires constant vigilance, self-reflection, and a deep dependence on the Holy Spirit.
I'm really eager to dive deeper into this and explore some practical steps we can take to build lives that glorify God. Can we unpack that a bit further?
Absolutely. But to do that, I think we need to go back to the heart of the Babel story and examine the motives behind those who sought to build that tower reaching for the heavens.
So let's get back to that root, the core of what went wrong. What was it about their motives that led them astray? Were they just ambitious, or was there like something deeper going on?
I think it was a combination of pride and this intense self-reliance. They believed they could achieve greatness, build this incredible legacy, and even reach heaven through their own efforts. It's like they forgot that true fulfillment and lasting impact, that comes from aligning our hearts with God's purposes.
Right, not from chasing worldly recognition.
Yeah,
that makes sense. It is easy to get caught up in the pursuit of success recognition, or even just, that feeling of being in control. We convince ourselves that we can handle it all on our own. We don't need God's help or guidance. But the Tower of Babel story, it really is a powerful reminder that apart from Him, our efforts are ultimately pointless.
They really are, and I think that brings us back to the question of how we can avoid building those metaphorical towers in our own lives. It starts with understanding that our true identity and purpose are found in Christ alone. When we really ground ourselves in that truth, our ambitions, our aspirations, they take on this whole new dimension.
It's like instead of striving for self-glorification, we start to see our talents, our resources, the opportunities that we have as gifts from God, entrusted to us for His purposes. It's a real shift in perspective, isn't it?
It is a big one.
It goes from what can I achieve to what can God accomplish through me.
Yeah, and that shift in perspective, it changes everything. It affects our career choices, our relationships, how we handle money, even our hobbies, how we spend our free time.
It's like everything we do becomes an act of worship.
It does.
A way of honoring God and reflecting His love to the world around us.
Exactly. So it's not about just abandoning our dreams and ambitions. It's about surrendering them to God.
Letting Him shape and refine them.
Yes, and trusting that His plans for us are far greater than anything we could ever dream up on our own.
I love that. It's a beautiful thought. And as we, surrender to God's guidance, we start to see the ways that He's calling us to use our unique gifts and experiences to build bridges instead of walls.
Yeah.
We become more aware of the needs around us.
Yeah.
More compassionate towards those who are different.
Right.
And more committed to using our resources to advance His kingdom.
It's like we're taking those lessons we learned from the rubble of Babel and we're applying them to our lives today.
Yeah, we're not striving for uniformity anymore. We're embracing diversity, recognizing that it's through our differences that God's creativity and power are most fully displayed. And instead of seeking self-promotion, We humble ourselves before God, allowing His love and grace to flow through us and touch the lives of others.
I think that's really the heart of it all.
Yeah.
The Tower of Babel story, it's not just a cautionary tale, it's an invitation to participate in God's grand redemptive plan. It's a call to lay down our pride, embrace His guidance, and use our unique gifts to build a world where His love reigns supreme.
Such a powerful reminder. So as you go about your day, I want you to take some time to reflect on your own life. What towers might you be building? What ambitions or desires are driving your choices? And how can you surrender those to God, allowing Him to transform your heart and empower you to live a life of purpose and impact?
Great questions. Remember, true unity doesn't come from uniformity, but from our shared connection to Christ.
Right.
He's the cornerstone, the foundation on which we can build lives that honor God, bless others, and leave a legacy that echoes into eternity.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Tower of Babel. May this ancient story challenge and inspire you to build your life on a foundation that will stand the test of time. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep growing in your walk with Christ.